So what I would like to talk to you about is how diversity can sometimes be very challenged in our societies. As you will hear, I come from this very disturbed region that suffered a lot in the previous 2 decades. But diversity, when translated into my mother tongue, Bosnian, does not actually means a lot to us. We don't use this word much. Instead, we use the words like different, a mixture, multicultural, multinational, multi-this and that. So there's a lot of these multis in the thing. But none of these completely encompasses what the diversity actually stands for, at least for me. It is all around us. It is everywhere. Wherever you look, you see diversity. It influences us in so many ways, even though sometimes we don't actually notice this, and we are not aware of it. Thus, diversity strikes us as a very important thing. Yep. I come from a country that was once very open, embracing diversity, encouraging it in our everyday lives, but then the horrible war stopped the whole thing. So when the war ended, diversity now was not that appreciated any longer. Diversity was not encouraged, and somehow it was partly banned from all of our lives. We had diversity in a political, lingual, cultural, historical, and all other ways. But this was not longer acceptable. My 2 brothers and I, we were born into diversity. Yep. My mother's side of the family has a Christian Catholic background. My father's side has a Muslim background. And many of our relatives come from the Orthodox background. We're always taught to embrace this diversity, to promote it wherever we go. Not to live it only for ourselves, but to spread it all over the town, all over the community, in our classes. It was not always easy. Coming from a mixture was not always acceptable. And just a few days ago, Muslims around the world celebrated a wonderful holiday of Eid. And even though my apartment is being renovated and my mother could not make a cake, she went to the shop and bought one. And I asked her, why, for the sake of things? We don't have a place where to eat it, actually. And she said simply, why not? It's a holiday, and there should be a cake on a holiday. It was not a homemade, but still, it was very delicious. And I have to tell you, there is a funny part of this story. Most of our holidays, we have cake. So when you combine them with all our birthdays, there should be cake roughly every 5 days in a year. So we are a huge family. Embracing this diversity made it possible for me to talk to other people, to travel around, to meet others, to meet another cultures, to study all over the Balkans, which was not easy when I was growing up. This made my life more exciting and more worth living, yep. And I speak only about this small part of my identity. There's so many other layers. We don't often think about diversity and what actually the diversity stands for. If you imagine you've been invited to a photo exhibition and you enter this gallery and there's 86 photos hanging on the walls. You look at them and all of them look the same. I mean, the photo is very beautiful, you would agree. But who would waste hours of time to look at the same photo all over again? So this is the essence and why diversity is important in our lives. Without diversity in all aspects of the things that we do, I think the world would be a very boring place, indeed. Where do we find this diversity? One definition states that diversity is a range of different things, basically differences. And differences can be found anywhere. We can find them in our everyday lives, we can find them in our houses, we can find them just sitting with other people. One time I was doing a workshop with young kids in a primary school, in a secondary school, 15 to 18 years of age, around 80 of them. I asked them, I've heard them talking about diversity, and I asked them to give me some time to brainstorm with them. Then I put them up on a piece of paper and draw the line. I asked them to tell me the differences. It was very easy. They said that the north is more populated, the north is more cold, the north is more developed, the north is more open, the north is more democratic, and so on and so on. For the south, they didn't have such beautiful words. So the south is much poorer. The south has problems. The south has so many conflicts, so many wars, and so many negative things. Then I challenged them with another map, a bit closer to us, a bit closer to our hearts and minds. I asked them to tell me differences between these two parts. Basically the same. The East is less developed. The East has problems. The East has migration crises they cannot handle. The West is democracy. The West is developed. The West is what we strive for. Then again, even closer to heart, separating Europe on what we know as a South and North. And they again said, the North is the one that bails us always out. The South is the one depending. The South has the problems, financial crisis. South has all these separatist movements. South is the one that always suffers, and the North is always one who fixed the problem. Then even closer, we started zooming in to the Balkans and then to Bosnia and Herzegovina with several lines. I'm not going to tell you the differences they told me at these meetings, a couple of them, because they're quite shocking, and they come from the legacy of war in the past 20 years where the transition almost never happened. We went on, and we finally came to the community where people were sitting and talking to me. So if you imagine this small town with 15,000 people, it's a quite small place. And I drew a line because I had no idea what the town looks like, who lives where, and what goes where. But apparently they did. They said, in this case, that the north is more developed because mayor lives there. Most of the city council comes from this place. Even though most of the kids who go to school are from the south, the school is in the north, and there's no bus from the south. The pavements are much nicer in the north. There is a tree lines, there is parks, there's everything that you need to live, while the south is being abandoned to some extent. So even in this small community, they found a huge list of differences. And then I asked them to imagine a line in a room when they were all sitting. So if I would ask you now to imagine that there is a line in the middle of the room and to start thinking about the differences. Naturally, they found many again. But this time, they were a little bit more positive and more personal, because there was no more political and strategic approach to all of this. At this point, they actually figured out where I was going with all of this. It is easy to find differences because they exist everywhere. Some of them are geographical and some of them are natural, which is fine, but most of them are social. The ones that we create as human beings, they are everywhere. But what is important to remember in all of this was that they all agreed 95% of differences that we found were actually the negative ones. This means that when we look at diversity, we try to find things that differentiate us from them. We found them, and we found them always negative ones. This is how this very bad definition of diversity came into our society. Not only Bosnia and Herzegovina, but the entire region. At some point, the diversity started becoming a synonym for something that is not ours, that we have to stay away from, that we have to keep distance from, something that was not desirable. We started giving negative connotations and meanings to the words where there should be none. Sometimes diversity in Bosnia and Herzegovina can be quite funny. For all of you who understand the Slavic languages, you will see we have 3 official languages, Bosnian, Serbian, and Croatian. And this is how the pack of cigarettes looks like. It basically says, smoking kills. The first language is Bosnian, second is Croatian, and third is Serbian. Or Croatian, Bosnian, and Serbian. It doesn't really make much of a difference. The only difference is that Serbian language is written in a Cyrillic, basically saying the same thing. And this is what we have in all our institutions, all our buildings, all our roads. Wherever you go, you will see everything written in triple languages. We know that they are not so much different, but we still appreciate this diversity, and we are lucky to have all 3 of them. So when I tell you later on coffee that I speak 6 languages, 5 of those are actually from the Balkans and then English, apparently. There's something else that happened to me. This is not the good side of diversity and how Bosnia and Herzegovina suffered from the war. One time, I was in a meeting with several Europeans coming from all over Europe, and we were talking about our experiences, and the girl who I've met quite recently, she introduced herself as an engineer. And as soon as I've heard the word an engineer, me being a lawyer by profession, I stopped listening. I left my mind to wander away. I couldn't actually care what she was saying because I thought she's not like me. I don't have anything to talk to her, so I just sometimes very unconsciously ignored her for a couple of days. And then in one of the workshops, she actually said what she does as an engineer is she builds planes, the ones that you can actually operate. And since I like to fly, and I like the planes, and I like to play still, yeah, with the toys, I started listening. I engaged my brain again, and then that was the moment where I actually learned things, where my mind went beyond this one small difference and started seeing what this person really is. This love for planes and a very small thing and toys started connection that now means a lot. She does not only build planes, but she uses these to make connections between kids in the Balkan region. She uses planes as a tool to make them socialize, to do something with their hands and their minds, with their hearts and their minds, to make something positive. Another story that comes to my mind is some time ago I was in a town in Bosnia and Herzegovina where they used Cyrillic letters as the first one. And this is something very common for Bosnia. We use Cyrillic and Latin equally, not everywhere, unfortunately. But then, all of a sudden, I was going through my slides. The topic was voluntarism, and slides were in Latin, except this one big slide, which was a photo. And I have to be honest, I didn't transcribe it, translate it, because I was too lazy. It was a huge thing, and I didn't find time just to do it in Latin words. And as soon as I started reading from the slide, from the wall, there were a couple of questions, a couple of hands raised. I stopped and asked them, and the thing was that they did not believe that I know the Cyrillics. Because of my background and my surname, they just assumed that I'm from another part, and there's no way I can do this. And they followed with the questions. Is it really you reading the Cyrillic, or someone told you what's written in there? Is it really reading, or there is somewhere this small piece of, the cheating piece of paper? Yep. They couldn't believe what they were actually hearing and seeing. So I continued talking to them how all of this can be used in our everyday lives and how they should not assume some things are right or wrong or yes or no. The discussion followed in so many other directions, but basically they started understanding how diversity is part of all of us. This brings me to another thing, this one thing. Diversity has a lot to do with the perceptions. And there's always a problem with the perceptions. How I see things, how you see things, and how other people see the same things. And how this view of this one thing is actually changing when you change the perspective. If you move from this side of the room to another side, you will see this stage completely differently. Try to think about it. And this is what I carry with me all the time. This is what I try to tell people wherever I go. I work with thousands of people every year. So it's a lot of young people from 10 to 28 years of age which I'm trying to teach or to enable them to learn that differences are not always negative, differences can be positive, and we have to find a way to make ourselves aware that we have a different perspectives, perceptions. So basically, this is like problem solving. You can either, one, trying to find a person to blame for all of this. So I can blame people for my prompter not working, so they're quite there. So it's their fault, or I can be a person who can actually try to find a solution, how the things can work for my benefit, how I can use this diversity, this challenge, this small problem that we have to actually get something beneficial for all of us. And I always choose the second. I always embrace diversity. And I think everyone else should. Thank you.